Welcome to the Ohio Cannabis Report. My name is Gerald Moore Jr. I'm the founder and I'm the host of this interview series, the Ohio Cannabis Report Community Conversations. I want to thank you guys for showing love, for being here. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and also hit the bell so you guys get all the notifications anytime we upload new content. Also, please follow us on Instagram at Ohio Cannabis Report. We love conversating with our followers. We do lives. We also promote a lot of education and community conversations on that platform as well. We can also be found on Twitter at Ohio Canna Report. We'll be on Instagram or we'll be on LinkedIn, and you can also find us on Facebook at Ohio Cannabis Report. With no further ado, here's our second conversation in this series with Danielle Adelsberger out of Athens, Ohio. Welcome to the Ohio Cannabis Report. This is our second community conversation where we're talking with industry workers, we're talking with community members, patients, people interested in cannabis from all over the state of Ohio. So today we have Danielle. How do you say your last name?
Adelsberger.
Danielle Adelsberger. And Danielle is 26 from Athens, Ohio. Shout out to the Bobcats. I am a Bobcat. So shout out to the first university in the state of Ohio. And so she's graduated from Ohio University in 2019, started working as a budtender at a new dispensary in Athens, Ohio. And she has her med card and then uses it for a variety of reasons, anxiety, chronic pain. And so with no further ado, Danielle, go ahead and introduce yourself. Let people know who you are, how you got involved in cannabis, and we'll go from there.
Well, about a year ago, I had a friend from college approach me and she said, "Hey, I have this friend. He's a part of this new startup. It's going to be a medical marijuana business in Athens." And I said, "Okay, that sounds kind of cool." And then like 6 months went by, didn't hear much. And then all of a sudden, it just kind of like, it was just like one thing after another. Like it was interview after interview. And yeah, it was a really eye-opening process, not like any other job I've applied for.
Had you worked previously to working in the industry?
No, this is my first job.
Okay, nice.
And when I was in college, I worked in restaurants, like college kids do. Post-grad, I graduated.
Well, talk about that too. Talk about that too, because I think, I graduated, but I graduated in 2012.
Okay.
We didn't have a cannabis industry, but there was a lot of weed in Athens, Ohio, right?
Yes, there was.
I played football as well, so like I was on a football team. So you're in this environment, and I come from the East Coast. You come from an environment where we don't talk about weed, or we talk about it as this demonization and people are bad. Whole time, college students are consuming cannabis, but they're not being educated on it, right? Like we're not necessarily, you might get some from some friend, but does he know the terpene profile? Does he know what it actually is? Where was it grown? How was it harvested? Probably not, and I think that's again why the industry is important. That's why having some of these conversations are important. But piggybacking off of that, what was your relationship with cannabis before you got your job? Was it something like in your family that had been talked about, discussed? How was that?
I'm very fortunate that my parents are very lenient. They don't mind that I've smoked in the past. I started smoking probably too young. But I'm also from here, and that's the big part
How
of like
young
growing
is too
up in
young?
Athens. I was 12 when I first smoked. But like you were saying, college students in this area, like it's either you drink or you smoke or you do both.
Amongst other
So I
drugs,
mean,
right? Because
and other stuff too. It's a very big
it's a party
problem down
school,
here.
right? I mean, you
Yeah,
have, obviously you have people on prescription pills, you have Adderall, you have, and this is a very open platform, by the way, because we need to have some of these deeper conversations. But it's
absolutely.
just college, you have a smorgasbord of drugs.
Yeah,
And you're at an age where you're impressionable. You know, whether you've been educated at home, whether you've been educated in society, you're going to dibble and dabble potentially. And so I think a lot of things start in college, right? You can see a lot of alcoholism start in college. You can see a lot of pill addiction and things of that start in college, but also amongst the stress, right? You know, a lot of college students are stressed, trying to accomplish, you know, life goals, relationship goals, the things that we put out there, with there not being a true roadmap, you know, but then having drugs that could be laced. There's
Yeah.
just so much going on, sex and just the whole nine. But cannabis, I think, plays a huge role too, because we see when we start to consume cannabis, hey, I might stop using as much alcohol, or I may back off of some of the prescription pills that I was using that I thought I needed for pain. And so that's kind of where my story was, right? Like I was prescribed pain pills for pain for football. But I realized cannabis helps me, you know, it was really more balancing, which I liked. It made my body feel better. So I think that's important to talk about, especially as a young woman in the industry. I think a lot of women struggle with having these conversations, and letting people know, like, hey, you know, like, yeah, I consumed when I was 12, but cannabis helps me. And, you know, going to
Yeah.
these parents or talking to your parents about it, it could be a very touchy subject. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing I wanted to say was people have this like idea that people who smoke are lazy or they don't have any goals or they're not driven. A lot of the people I know growing up and when I met people in college, they're some of the most like put together people. Like
Right.
they know what they want out of life and they're gonna try to chase that goal. And so I don't know. I just feel like it's important to like break that stigma. Like you don't have to be that lazy stoner. Like you
Right.
can do what you want and
Sure.
make it for yourself.
For sure. And I think too, that's, you know, bringing up the point that cannabis is like, it's not just a one-off thing. You know, everybody's body, everybody consumes it for different reasons, different purposes. But you can't just put a blanket over it and says that everybody that consumes is lazy, stoner,
Yeah.
uneducated, ignorant, whatever you want to say. You know, a lot of people are self-medicating, right, too, with cannabis. When it comes to that, you know, we talk about mental health, we talk about some of these things. A lot of people may be self-medicating because, you know, they need help regulating their emotions or their bodies and stuff like that. So, you know, it's not, you know, we talk about being kind, right? It's not kind to judge people who may be trying to help themselves, by consuming a plant, which, you know, has been demonized, which now is coming above ground. People are making millions of dollars. The state is making millions of dollars from the taxes. People are creating startup companies. People are having jobs. You're fresh out of college. Like, I would have loved to be fresh out of college and have a cannabis job. What? Like, I'm
Right.
jealous. Coming from
It's
OU,
awesome.
like, you know, I was drug tested so many times at OU as a football player. Like, you get drug tested by the school, you get drug tested by the NCAA. And like, I'm pissing my pants, you know, because you're like, I could lose my scholarship. You know, I could be on
Yeah.
ESPN for
Over a
weed,
plant. Over
for
a plant.
weed, you know,
Yeah.
and like, you know, the amount of stress, the pressure that you deal with. But to be on this side, and that's why I've been so like aggressive in being online, talking about cannabis and weed. Like, I have a platform called Athletes in Cannabis as well. But because that stigma, right? Like, even racially, like racial bias, community bias, and obviously that was one of the reasons we're here now. They didn't want, right? They don't want a black man talking to a white girl about cannabis. Athens,
Yeah.
it's like it breaks some of those ideologies that, hey, we can't get along, or we can't have conversations, we can't find common ground. And I think that's what cannabis does, right? It sits at that intersection where we can have some of these deeper conversations, learn more about each other,
Mm-hmm.
while continuing to elevate. So yeah, thank you for bringing
Absolutely.
that up. So got into the cannabis industry from a friend who was a part of the startup.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've been in it. How long have you been in the cannabis industry?
So we started doing our training like early July. The
Okay.
dispensary opened about mid-August. And
Okay.
so it's late November now. So it's still really fresh.
So fresh. So
Um,
how has the experience been from the vantage point of being in the industry? helping patients? What are you seeing? What are you experiencing?
I studied speech therapy and audiology in undergrad. I wanted to be a speech therapist, work with older adults. And it was kind of a big transition because you're told how to help patients a certain way. Well, this is alternative medicine. Like you said, everybody's different. Everybody's got different ailments, reasons why they use cannabis. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of a learning curve for me to learn the best way to help our patients. A big thing I'm realizing is people, like we said earlier, are using cannabis to get off hard narcotics. I mean, this week alone, I think I had 2 or 3 patients tell me that they were former users of hard prescription drugs, and that cannabis kind of like opened this new world for them. So that's really, it's just kind of like heartwarming knowing that like they made that effort to get their med card to like help themselves.
Right.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think because too, like, I mean, it's one thing to be a patient, right? It's one thing to maybe grown up. Like I grew up around weed. So to me, it's like everybody tripping. I was like, I found out my granddad was growing weed in the basement of the house I was raised in. I didn't find that out until I was like my till 30s. But I started consuming at 16. So to me, like I haven't had, I've had that relationship, but to see other people and then to see what other people are going through, right? Like the amount of people on opioid prescriptions and understanding like the mental part of that addiction that keeps a lot of people from getting healthier, or just maybe the socioeconomic issues, right? Being in Athens, Athens is a poverty, like it's Appalachia, right? So this, the healthcare system. My degree is in healthcare administration. I study healthcare, and so when you look at our medical systems, our hospital systems, and we're just prescribing people. And again, being in alternative medicine, one of the hard things is you want to be able to spend time with patients. You want to be able to build and cultivate relationships with them so you can, understand them, but also help prescribe them in a better way. And not just continue to be like the pill machine where you come in, you get your pills and you leave, and there's nobody helping. And that's why conversations matter.
Yeah, and that's what's nice about this being kind of like a small business right now. We're slow getting new patients in, but it is nice to like make those great relationships with your patients, be on like a first name basis with them, know what they're going through. And it's almost like a type of therapy for them when they come in and they're like filling us in on what's been going on since they came in the last time, or like even just talking about like what they're interested in, like if they like flower, if they like edibles for a certain reason. It's just nice to talk to them about that. And that they're not as worried about being seen going to a dispensary. Like I have this one lady, she would wear like a hat. She'd try to cover her face as much as possible. Because she has a really like serious job. And literally the day after issue 2 passed, she came in, no cover on her face. She was like, I feel so relieved, like knowing that I'm not going to like risk my job now because of this. And I was like, you're buying your medicine. Like you shouldn't have to worry about that. Like I just hope that it changes.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and that's why we're doing this, right? That's why we're having these type of conversations, because again, think about how many people are living life like that right now. You know what I mean? Think about the people that don't have a dispensary to go to or can't go to a dispensary. So they got to buy it, maybe off of the streets, or maybe they have to go up to Michigan because everybody doesn't have a card, right? So we still don't have, full legalization yet. So there's still so many gaps. There's still gaps in education. There's gaps in resources. The state of Ohio isn't marketing or educating the community at large, right? So the only type of education you truly get is if you have a relationship with a budtender by, going to the dispensary, or if you've gotten a doctor, you're connected with a doctor. But from what we see, like there's not a lot of information being disseminated. You kind of have to pride for it. But then you have people in the know, right? You have high ranking people that have, maybe good jobs, and they are hiding themselves and they aren't speaking publicly about this, and that slows the progression, right? That slows other people from coming out and being more vocal. Ever since we started the Ohio Cannabis Report, I've been overwhelmingly like surprised by the amount of people that have connected with us, that have reached out or said thank you, or this has helped me be more vocal.
Yeah.
And I've forced like some of my friends, like I can be a pusher, like it's not good sometimes, I could be overbearing, but when you understand how powerful we are as individuals, as human beings, when you've had success at high levels, you understand what it takes to disrupt, to build, to create. We're going into uncharted territory. So there is no roadmap. So what are we being timid about?
Yeah.
You might lose a job, but then you might have something way better on the horizon, right? You went into college thinking that you were going to go into speech therapy. Now you're in cannabis, but just think about now when we make the connection to speech therapy and cannabis, right? Think about that intersection. You have the institutional way to now cater to it, but now you have an alternative method where you can come in and say, hey, there might be some ways we can supplement cannabis in, and this might help because cannabis does help with speech. It helps with brain function, a lot of things.
Absolutely.
And so once we start to have those conversations, then it becomes like the light bulb goes off for a lot of people. Like, oh my gosh, like you don't just have to smoke it. Like there's tinctures, there's, edibles, there's all sorts of things that, can get it in your system. And it's not making your eyes bloodshot red. Everybody's eyes aren't low all the time. You could get CBD. So there's just all these misconceptions, but that's part of the stigma. Ending the stigma is having those conversations, being
Yeah.
vulnerable, enough to say to risk, because this is very vulnerable, right? Going public, being on the internet, being on YouTube, and then people see you and be like, I didn't know you were a cannabis consumer. And then they start to judge, right? We're a very judgmental society. You could lose a job based upon this. So I think it's important that we continue to have these conversations, but also the people in your position understand how powerful you are because you're seeing things that not everybody sees, right? You picked up on something that everybody might not pick up on, right? An
Mm-hmm.
executive coming into a dispensary clothed up, because they don't want anybody to know because they may be a public figure, right?
Yeah.
If somebody sees them, let's say they work at the school, right? Let's say they may be a coach at the school because this is something I thought about, right? I coach kids. I could be a college coach if I wanted to, but imagine me going to pick up, something from the dispensary and then one of my players sees me and then it's like this perception of, oh, my coach is doing it. But we see our coaches drink, right?
Yeah. Drinking is so socially acceptable. Like, why can't cannabis?
Right,
And
right.
I think that'll be really great for Athens because do you know about the taco law that came out a few years ago in Athens?
Mm-mm.
It's an ordinance where you're allowed to have like up to a certain amount of cannabis and not get like fined for it. I
Okay.
can't remember what the total is, but
My
I
dream,
feel like
this is my
I feel like
dream
that's helped a lot too in this area,
for
honestly.
sure.
Like, because you go to the bars and people are smoking at the bars, like outside the bars. Like,
Oh my
you just
goodness.
walk down Court Street and you smell it now. Like,
Oh,
so
that's why I
that's
love
good.
Athens. I love it.
It's great. It's great. But yeah, so hopefully, the college students kind of, help the economy in this
Oh, for
area
sure.
too.
Well, and I think too, that's what I learned with going to school in Athens. Like I always grew up in like cities, so
Mm-hmm.
I was raised in Washington, D.C. area. So like you get used to being like in the busiest like of everything. It's a melting pot. But then when I got to Athens, and I wanted to go to Athens on purpose because I was like, I wanted to go to a small school. I wanted to play D1, but I didn't want to go to like Ohio State, these big schools.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a normal student that just so happened to be on an athlete. I could have normal friends. I could have my athlete friends. Didn't need a car. And so I loved it for that small town reason. But then I realized, man, like the student population, it's such a vibe. You know what I mean? Like, um, it's unexplainable. It's a very magical place. But then you realize when it comes to cannabis or it comes to like college students, we're not necessarily empowered to be politically active. or
Yeah.
politically astute in how powerful your voice is. You know, like college students could run the world.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, if
Yeah.
college students knew, like if they weren't drunk off their asses and high off their asses 24/7 and afraid of an accounting grade or afraid of the professor that's been there for 50 years, and they came together, they could run the world. And that's
Absolutely.
something we don't talk about. You know, we don't empower our youth, and we have a lot of older people running the show right now. That's why we're struggling. We're struggling because there are generational things happening right now, right? You have our senators and congress people who are all 70, 80, 90, 100 years old, you know, and they're controlling the levers of power, right? But then you have the baby boomers, which are them. Then you have the silent generation. You have the millennials, which is me, Gen Z. And it's like, well, we're broke. We don't have no money. We done been through the housing crises. We have been
Yeah.
through wars. We can't fund housing. There's so many issues. But then it's like, well, we got billions to send to other countries for war. Like it's just something not making any sense. Why aren't we investing in our next generation? Why aren't we investing in alternative medicines? Cancer is through the roof. Like health issues in America are through the roof. You know, why aren't we like we need a hard stop turn? You know,
Yeah.
none of
We need to
this
take
like
care of ourselves. Yeah.
right. We need to take care of like we have so many problems. The reason there's so many fights between different groups is because women feel like they don't have power. You know what I mean? So then you have your different groups. You have white women, you have black women, you have Native American, you have indigenous or immigrant women coming over. Then you have males now, like, well, we don't feel seen. But then you have black men like, well, shit, don't nothing cater to me. I don't get no money from. So there's everybody's fighting. There's no progress. You know,
Exactly.
stand still. So, but hopefully, I think the tide is turning. With issue two. But again, I think this is something. Again, we have to be way more vocal because our politicians they don't want cannabis to be something that is thriving because they understand again that takes away some of that control, right? Like we can't control people's thoughts and emotions and feelings, or just be putting people on drugs, right? On like all the antidepressants that folks are on these days that are just making us zombies, you know. They don't have that same control, that same mind control. So I think issue two will help. It's coming up fast. What are your
You
thoughts?
know,
What are your thoughts on issue two? What are your thoughts on home grow? The social equity. Do you want to be a grower? Do you want to start your own thing? How do you feel about that?
personally, I don't think I'd be able to grow. I don't think I'd be very successful in it. If I did more research, and had the resources to like do it, I would be all for it. I'm all for people growing on their own. I know a lot of my coworkers are like really interested in the grow process. My roommates are interested in it, so I'm like, more power to you. Like,
Sure.
it's legal. Like, you will be able to. I'm not gonna say anything. Like, that's awesome. I'm really relieved that issue two passed because I mean I spent time in Colorado and I remember telling my ex at the time, I was like, I'm nervous to go out and do anything. And he's like, there's no reason to be nervous about like being high. Everybody is high. Like, and
Everybody.
so that was very relieving. And then like even when I got my med card like a few months ago, like I was waiting and waiting and waiting to feel that sense of like relief,
Oh yeah.
knowing that like I'm protected now,
Yeah.
and I'm taking care of myself in a different way. Like I was on anti-anxiety medicine for a really long time.
Mm.
Never, never really was beneficial to me. Like honestly, I had more issues like than I was getting help.
Yeah.
Um,
Talk
and
about that
cannabis,
because I mean, talk about that because I think we all deal with anxiety, right?
yeah,
I mean, it's a natural human reaction to deal with anxiety. It's a survival mechanism. But talk about how, maybe those medicines maybe impacted you, and how, cannabis is helping you as well,
yeah,
conversely.
absolutely. So I struggled a lot with sleep. and I would fall asleep, but I couldn't stay asleep. So I'd be waking up every hour, every half hour, just like totally restless. I was working third shift
Oh,
at the
wow.
time. So I was a college student. I was in my last semester of college, which is stressful in its own.
Hustling.
Working a third shift job. So 9 p.m. to like 4 or 5 a.m. some days.
Oh, my God.
So my sleep schedule was whack. School was stressful, personal life stuff, you know. Um, and so I started taking Prozac, and Prozac just made everything like 100 times worse. I was at the lowest I probably could have been. And if I would have cut back on the drinking, I feel like I would have been in a better position.
Yeah.
But then I slowly started weeding out the alcohol and smoking a little more.
Yeah.
And that was enough for me to be like, okay, I'm seeing more clearly. I don't think I need antidepressants anymore. So I talked to my physician and I weaned myself off of those. Only take Ativan just like when I'm having a panic attack,
Yeah.
which helps a lot. Like it's a nice tool to have. It's not
Yeah.
the solution. It's just a
Right.
tool. And cannabis has really just like helped slow me down. I feel like I'm always on the go. And it kind of like puts me back in my place and just resets me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's powerful. And I think that, I mean, that testimony is important, right? Because I think the biggest thing about healthcare and what, what we have to, as people in the industry, and just as humans, we have to understand that there's not a one thing fix all, right? Like it's about having a toolbox. It's about having resources and things that you can pull from. It's not saying that all pharmaceutical medicines can't help,
Yeah.
but it's understanding how they're supposed to, and that, like, I just messed up my finger, so I was in a lot of pain. So yes, I'm going to take a little bit of pain medicine,
Yeah.
to offset some of that physical pain that's just unbearable, but I think, we have to have, the problem with our health industry is that we haven't educated the masses on being healthy. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need a doctor, a lot of times, if you understand exercise, rest, nutrition, herbal remedies and things of that
Yeah.
nature. You know what I mean? Healthy communities, right? When you look at a college environment, it's stressful already. You're young, you know what I mean? So there's just so much going on. Then you add in alcohol, obviously drugs, all the other things, relationships, and then it just becomes like, how the hell do we make it out of this? You know what I
No,
mean?
absolutely. Like I
But
never thought I would be where I am right now.
yeah,
Because like I
like, how
mean
could you?
I graduated in December right before COVID. So like
Mm,
it was that big transition period of like,
yeah,
okay, well now I'm gonna start studying for like grad school and like getting ready for that. And then the world shut down and I was like, great, there's one more thing I have to worry about. Like and then I kind of gave up on grad school. I was just like, I don't know, maybe it was meant to be like the world shutting down. Like
right,
maybe I'm not meant to be a speech therapist. So I'm really
right,
grateful that I found this career where you can like move up and just kind of like be your own advocate,
right.
um, and
Yeah.
try to like better yourself like in any way.
Yeah, that's powerful too. And I think, it's hard because this is still, I think we're still so fresh from COVID. And I think there'll be a lot more conversations, obviously, as people heal and rebound and get more comfortable. But, that transition, I think COVID forced a lot of people, out of their comfort zone, right? It forced a lot of people to, like, it jarred us, you know what I mean? Like, are you just living, or are you really trying to live and create and be? And then it also brought in that fear of, maybe I don't have that much time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I think it forced a lot of people, to do things differently, see things differently, experience things differently. But also, cannabis became an essential service, right, during COVID. So we got legalization, medical legalization, uh 2017, I think, 2017. And then COVID happened, and now cannabis in Ohio becomes an essential service, which is like crazy. And then the fact that like we don't talk about it. Like you don't see any billboards about cannabis in Ohio.
Unless
There's
it's
no,
negative.
yeah, unless it's negative, the commercials are still negative. But even when we have conversations, like where are the conversations? Where are the doctors? Like, shout out to Dr. Bridget. That's my homegirl. We wrote a book, Courage in Cannabis, which I'm in the second volume of. But she's a Ohio cannabis doctor, also works out of Michigan, but she's been very vocal. I mean, she's come out, she does events. Where are the other doctors? You know,
Yeah,
there's like, there's got to be 200 plus doctors in the state. Why aren't doctors in Ohio being more vocal about the benefits of cannabis? About um, cannabis being alternative to anxiety medicine, pain management medicine. For me, it's like these are the people that should be, they're the ones with the extra, time getting their degrees. They're the ones that people will listen to because they have doctor in front of their name. They got MD
yeah,
behind their name.
they're
Um,
credible, and like you want to, like they want you to trust them, but like how can we trust you if you're not willing to speak out about it? You know?
Right. Like, who are we to trust, right? We can't trust the politicians, can't trust the doctors. Then it's like, who are we to trust? And then you have the executives that are like, well, the executives ain't saying nothing. Like, I know a lot of executives. I know lawyers, doctors, entrepreneurs, all of them. And I have some that will speak, but I have to approach them, you know what I mean? And it has to be right for them, it has to be, but it's like at the end of the day, freedom of speech.
Yeah,
At the end of the day, like if you're not performing your job under the influence, shouldn't be a problem. Some people
exactly.
can't perform their jobs under the influence, like at the end of the day, cannabis isn't one of those things where you're sloppy drunk.
Yeah.
You can't focus, you can't read, you can't write, you can't be attentive. So what type of cannabis do you like? Are you more of a myrcene, limonene? Are you a flower? Are you a RSO? What you like?
So I usually consume flour. I've been kind of dabbling
How do
in
you
like
consume
the
flower? Are you a vape? Are you what do you consume out of?
bong usually. I
Okay.
like a good cone every now and then. I'm unable to roll my own, so I take the easy route. I usually smoke a cone every now and
Hey,
then.
cones. Hey, I love cones
Cones are great. They're slept on, definitely.
for sure.
Um, and I've kind of been more interested in like edibles now that I have my med card.
Yeah.
Just like testing out things, and that's another good thing about having a med card and working in this industry. Like you're able to try things and make recommendations
Mhm.
based on what you've tried.
Yeah.
I have
And
like a
you have a
list of
wide
all our
variety.
products. Yeah, yeah. And I have a list of all the products I've tried, how they made me feel, like if I liked it, so I can like refer back to that if I'm ever like consulting with a patient. Um, but yeah, I I don't know. I'm a lover of all like ways to consume cannabis, but
Oh, no, I love that because it's too like you get people that they're all different types of people. Like I was never like a rosin person, you know what I mean? Like I always was afraid of the torch, And it's like where I come from, it's only flour. We rolling it up, put it in a backwood,
yeah,
all of these extra scientific ways of
yeah,
getting
it's really
cannabis
eye opening. And like I've been to a couple facilities, cultivation facilities. The first one I went to, my mind was blown. Like I was not expecting that when I walked in. I was just so impressed, even with just the kitchens in
Mhm.
these facilities.
Oh
Like
yeah.
they're so, it's so incredible. Like,
Well, that's I think another big thing too, right? Like a lot of people on the outside with the stigma think that, oh, like cannabis is tainted and it's being grown in these jungles and forests and people's garages, and it's not. And it's like, no, this is a science experiment. Like for a lot of like, this is a very high tech industry. I mean, when you look at the tools, when you look at the tech and research, the software that goes into the lighting, the nutrients, like there's so much.
lights and the
Yeah.
like air regulation in the facilities, it's just insane. Like how much money and time is like put into this.
Yeah. And I think that's something that, the more that it comes, forefront and people from behind the scenes that actually do the creation, the growing, the cultivation, the bud tenders like yourself have those conversations and let us know, because I'm the type of person like, I don't know. You know what I mean? That's
Have you
why.
ever been to a grow facility in
Yes.
Ohio? Yeah.
Yep. I've been to one grow facility. I've been to a processor. I've been to Benaleaves. I've been to Diamond Sciences, which is Ohio Clean Leaf. Uh,
Hmm.
and that's about it in terms of cultivation facilities. I want to do more. I want to do like more tours and stuff. So I'm looking at hopefully finding a videographer and getting some like behind the scenes tours of all the different, dispensaries, cultivation facilities, because I think people need to see where their medicine's being made and come from, right? Like I think there's.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And like the one facility I went to, they were very strict. They were like, you can only take like one photo, and it's
Mhm.
like a group photo, and you're
Oh,
like,
for sure.
okay, well, okay, whatever. And then like the other facility I went to, they were like very lenient. Obviously, like still like no touching products
Right.
because that's just contamination. But no, they were like very relaxed, and it was very like welcoming, and it was comfortable. Like
Right.
it was nice being in that kind of facility. So I feel like a lot more people would feel better if they could see like where your stuff is coming from,
Right.
the people who are growing it. So that's why I think that this is like awesome that we're doing this interview.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, and thanks for that, because that's why we're doing it, And sometimes like I don't even know, like I just feel led. You know what I mean? Like, when you just get those like intuition, it's just like I'm a creative. So like with the internet and social media, like if I have an idea sometimes and it could be put into a digital space, I just create it and I just
Yeah.
keep up with it. You know what I mean? It's like a continuous project. And so that's what I did with Ohio Cannabis Report. I was like, nobody's talking about Ohio cannabis, like from my vantage point at least, or from how I see it. I have relationships, I have connections. Ohio Cannabis Report. And I was like, I want to talk
Absolutely.
about all things. I talk about, the when dispensaries open. But I mean, my most impactful thing is like I want to talk to people, because I want to see how people are being, because we are the ones being impacted by it, whether positively or negatively, by it not being promoted, by it not being, more educational. Like some of us are hurting, because
Yeah.
imagine if, people were more vocal and it was more acceptable, and we don't have to be scared or afraid to, let people know like, hey, this is something that I'm doing, and it's helping me, So
Yeah.
what's something, uh, we'll finish off. I told you what, 30, 40 minutes. So what's something that you want people to know, maybe in Ohio broadly, about cannabis? And where do you see our industry going in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think it's important that people do their own research. I
Mhm.
feel like there's not enough of people even just like knowing how to do their own research. Like going into my job, I
It's tough.
didn't really know any of the big companies, any of even the smaller companies.
Right.
Um, so once I like finally got in there and started learning about like Fire Relief, Cresco, like companies like that, even like Meigs County, like it's really
Next
cool
county
having like
gold, baby.
I know it's so cool, and it's great like being able to just learn about Ohio because like I'm an Ohio girl through and through. I love
Born
being
in
from
Ohio. Were
Athens.
you born in Athens?
I am, yeah.
Oh
So
my
I was
gosh, you're a townie.
yes,
Hey, I'm a
and
townie.
so
I'm a townie for sure. Like I used to, so
absolutely,
when I moved off campus, I used to stay uptown on Court Street, at the apartments they're right next to the Chipotle. So
yeah, yep.
what Sky, it used to be called Skyview. But when I used to stay there and school would be out of session, like, oh my, like that was like my favorite time. Like
It
nobody was
is.
there.
It's the best.
I
It's the
used to I
best.
used to smoke so much weed in Athens out my window. Like that's why like I've been thinking about going back to school, um and either get my master's. I was thinking about coaching, but coaching take up so much time. But like I just love the vibe in Athens, like
There's nothing like
it's
it.
so
It's
beautiful, it's peaceful, the people is cool. It's
yeah.
that small town, like I'd be ready to get away from like the hustle and bustle life, you know what I mean?
I okay. I have to tell you the story because it's so funny. But I had this teacher in high school. he and his wife, they went on their honeymoon in Jamaica, and they were like, "Oh, where are you from?" And his cab driver knew what Meigs County was. They
Oh
knew
my,
Meigs County gold. Somebody in Jamaica knew that. And I was just like, oh,
hey,
the opportunity is just so insane. But
that's
no,
crazy.
it's great. And I feel like I've learned so much even in just these few short months. I can't imagine what I'm gonna know in a year.
Right.
So it's just really exciting. And I'm somebody who likes to learn. I'm somebody who is always like trying to figure out the next best thing. So I feel like this is a really good time to be in this industry and like setting myself up for like a potential career. Like it's not just a job anymore, it's a career.
100%. And I mean, with legalization, I mean, technically we're a new industry, right? So you become a pioneer, you become an expert, you become a thought leader because you are here and you're using your voice, you're using your experience, your knowledge, you're gaining firsthand experience and knowledge. Like a lot of people don't understand, like the firsthand experience knowledge is that's the most powerful, right? Like hearing stories of patients coming off of hard drugs or dealing with certain things, those are the experiences that not many people like outside of your experience get to hear or know,
Yeah.
which allow you to have a different perspective, which allow you to, treat people differently or create a consulting, let's say, regimen. Maybe, maybe women or young girls confide in you. And then that
Yeah.
allows you to then say, hey, this is what works for me. Hey, I know you're on antidepressants. This is helping me. This is how you can have that conversation with your mom or dad. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because I think a lot of people, when we don't have mentors, we don't have coaches, we don't have people that look like us, that deal with similar situations, that's why we kind of become insular, and keep to ourselves, which hurts us in the end,
And there's no room to grow. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
So, and this is a growing industry. So we're growing, we're evolving. You talk about spirituality, right? Like just think about like the peace that comes with it. You think about some of maybe the ideas that have come from you just consuming, relaxing, chilling with your girls, maybe. There's so many things that spawn from cannabis, which is why I love it. So, thank you
Absolutely.
for coming on and sharing everything that you shared.
Yeah.
Do
Thanks
you
for
have
having me.
yeah, you have anything else that you want to leave the people? How can the people find you on social media? Maybe consulting, somebody want to reach out to you. Um,
Yeah. Um, my Instagram is Danielle_Adelsberger. You can post it in the video if you want. That's totally
okay.
fine. If you don't want to, that's totally fine.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm an open book. I love to talk to people and like learn about like people's experiences. So yeah, I'm an open book.
Putting on for Ohio Cannabis, baby.
Yeah, like thank God we're finally to where we are now. Like
Yeah, it's
it's
been a
just about to take
long
off.
time coming.
Yeah,
And the thing about
so it's exciting.
Ohio, like Ohio is one of those rebellious states, right? Like, so Ohio, people been growing weed in Ohio. Like Ohio's a great place. It's an agricultural state. So
Yeah,
there's never been a lack of weed. Because I used to smoke so much good. Like my backup quarterback when I was at OU, he was our drug dealer. And he used to have pounds. And it was
yeah,
so good. And this was 2008, 2009. So then like we fast forward to where we are now. And it's just like I just love talking about it because I'm like, I've been consuming forever and it's been something that has been normal for me. And I just want to share it with the world. I want to share it with other
yeah.
people, because it makes me feel good. But when you have to hide that part of you, anytime you have to hide any part of you, I think it's tough. I felt that way. I didn't start talking about it till I got my card. Once I got my
Mhm.
card, I was like, freedom. I can talk
Yeah,
about it.
a
Um,
big sense of relief.
and I
And
mean, I think there's so many people like that. And that's why this platform is important because the more of us that could come out, share our stories, share our positive stories, right? There's so many negative stories. There's so much propaganda, but there's way more positive stories. Everybody I talk to, there's been way more positive. Yeah, you have the people that are like, oh, I smoked and I was paranoid the first time.
yeah,
Yes, we all get
that's
paranoid.
everybody.
Like we all get paranoid if we
Yeah,
smoking and we see flashing red and blue lights drive by the house, or you're
game
listening
over.
to music and it's sirens. Like I listen to rap music, and a lot of times you hear gunshots and sirens. If you high, you're gonna be a little paranoid, right? But
Yep.
also we get too high, maybe. Also, maybe you didn't know what you were consuming that led you to your heart racing because you had some terpenes that caused you to be upper. Maybe you are
Absolutely.
somebody that needs more lower vibrational terpenes, So again, conversation helps to bring some of those things out, the positive things, the positive ways that we can interact and have conversations. So I think it's a plus for sure. So we're definitely gonna have you back. I'm probably gonna have this uploaded. I pretty much upload it real quick. I don't do a whole lot of cut paste. Like I like the full authentic version.
The
Um,
raw version,
the raw
yeah.
version, you know what I mean? It's 2023, baby. We need authenticity. We need
Absolutely.
transparency. Enough of, I've been on big productions, I've done commercial modeling and acting, but a lot of times that takes away from authenticity, right? If I'm selling you a product or a service, you're selling imagery, right? We're selling something. Like me, no, I'm not selling myself. I'm selling my truest, authentic version of myself at my lowest self, right?
Absolutely.
I'm going through something. I'm going through pain. I'm going through trauma. Cannabis helps because it's a continuing thing too, right? It's not like, oh, we just heal and we're done.
Yeah.
Healing is a
You have to work
perfection.
at it.
Yeah, and you have to work at it. You have to have those tools to know that, oh, I'm slipping here. I've been working hard. I need to get some rest, or I need, to balance myself out. So this is why these conversations matter. They're important, and we appreciate you for sharing and being your authentic self. And
Thank you.
so thank you,
Well, thank you
Danielle.
for having me.
I appreciate you. Everybody else appreciates you. Y'all make sure y'all like, follow, subscribe, do all that social media stuff. Follow Danielle, show her some love, and we'll come back to you guys later. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks.
Peace. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
Bye-bye.